Linux or BSD as a base, just build their own thing from scratch. That ramps up the development costs, it ramps up the maintenance costs. That's not what they're about. So they'll choose something that's already they'll choose something that's already widely used, widely established, that they can customize, and then find a way to differentiate. So it's them getting the balance. In Android, that might be putting their own layer of applications on that people may or may not like, their own branding onto it, their own like the Vodafone store, or or could be like Dell selling their laptops and having various things that tie into Dell and having the splash screen on your laptop showing you Dell. So it's the same kind of idea that even, I mean, unless you're actually going to, when it comes back to smartphones, unless you're actually installing Android yourself, you're not going to get a vanilla Android. No carrier is going to give you that.
The same thing with Chrome and Chromium OS. That's what they have, the Chrome. Yeah. So there is the open source version, and there is the one they put Flash in and all kinds of proprietary things that are supposed to make things more convenient for you, but they, at the same time, package things in the very same way you would find typical software. So you have the hacker-friendly version, and you have the version that's kind of uniform, that's supposed to be the supported version. And if you use the hackable one, they say, well, we cannot support it because you could have changed the source code.
Yeah, I remember a little while ago, I think it was Vodafone on one of the HTC, possibly the HTC Desire. Vodafone were saying, we're just giving you the hint to those users and saying, oh, there's an update to the HTC Desire, and everyone was expecting, oh great, Android 2.2, and they go and download it, and it wasn't Android 2.2. It was a lot of Vodafone's own apps for some 360 service.
Yeah, that's rebadged one. They also do it with Samsung, actually. They just rebadged the thing. It's basically the same normal Samsung phones, and they just put the brand of a British, so you think it's a British phone, but it's just a Korean phone. Did you know that? Or?
So no, I didn't hear about that. But I mean, all of that ties into people's own experiences of Android or of Linux or even of Windows. I mean, when you get a new Windows PC, you can't buy it without Windows, so you get it with Windows. And the amount of crapware that's installed on that by default is just insane. The first thing you do, even if you want to use Windows, is wipe it and install a fresh copy of Windows without all that crap.
The same thing starts to happen now with Android. For example, Verizon is going to almost force you to use the Bing toolbar or at least Bing search on trying to route you into Microsoft services for a very simple reason, and that Microsoft paid them $500 million. As far as I think it's confirmed by now. I heard about it last year, and this year I found an article which confirms the number. It's $500 million they spend to have Verizon making a lot of people extremely unhappy because they cannot use Google, but they are willing to tolerate this because they're getting the kickbacks from Ballmer. And this is also a case, as correctly Tim pointed out before the chat. He how did he put it? He basically said this is going to, first of all, drive traffic to Microsoft, but secondly, it's going to make people extremely unhappy or a bit bitter about Android. They'll say, oh, Android, that's the one that sends me to Microsoft services and I cannot use Google. So Microsoft also makes people less attracted to Android. At the same time they get more traffic, and that's kind of playing into their own hands as they do that. But again, I was going to say that they basically have all this crapware increasingly. In the case of Samsung now, they use a different brand, which is Bada. I think it means ocean in Korean. And that's just basically like a skin for Android. But they try to say, well, this is our own invention and this is our own operating system that we made especially for you. But again, they use Android, which uses a lot of Linux and lots of different components which are free software. But there is a loss of attribution and loss of understanding of how these operating systems are made.
Yeah, I mean, all of this, basically, the perception that you as an end user have, even if you're not technically minded, especially if you're not technically minded or technically interested, the impression you get of your device is what you've got when you use it. And if that happens to be you buy an Android phone and people say to you, oh, you should get, for example, the HTC Desire, brilliant phone, and they happen to go out and get it, and they don't realise, they get it home and say that's because of the carrier they went with, it's got all this crapware installed on it, it's got all these skins installed on it, and it's Android 1.6, you know, and they're looking at that, that's their impression. They don't know that if they'd went and got it on a different carrier, it would come with Android 2.2, and it wouldn't have all that stuff on it. So people's impression is formed around what they have. That's one area that Apple really have got it under their own control, because there is only one iPhone. You buy an iPhone, you get the same experience as everyone else who buys an iPhone.
You have a different version. Now you have iPhone 4, so I suppose you could say it's more uniform because people know the version numbers, but you could actually tell them it's Android 2.2 and Android 2. Whatever. You could have people realize that they have different versions for Android, and they know what Android is. So
I do think actually this recently, when I got my Android phone, I did actually notice that it was kind of surprising, but I suppose not really in hindsight, that when you looked at the different the little cheat sheets for not cheat sheets, the little fact sheets for each phone, each handset about what it's got and what features it's got, and they would actually say Android 1.6 or Symbian or iOS, whatever it is. They would actually say that, or Windows Mobile or something. So that was actually quite surprising, because I was expecting to have to actually ask, look, I'm looking for an Android phone, I don't want to see anything else, show me the Android phones. But at least they were actually marked out on the tickets. So.
Right, well, moving on to any other news we have for the day. Gordon, is there anything else you want to look at? Anything of interest to you before we move on to the quick mentions of some Linux software?
No, I could do my traffic cop thing and say that. Moving on.
Right. Roy, same offer to you. Anything else in the news you want to highlight before we...
gaming news. I found quite a bit of gaming news, but they mostly came from the same source. So I was a bit surprised, and that was a person called Tim.
Yeah, well...
I have one exception though, and that's it's called Unigine or Unine. It's kind of like engine with uni at the start. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's basically a company that tries to promote a new engine for rendering in 3D. I think it's a Russian company or something. And Phoronix has been promoting them for a while and trying to give them more exposure. And now they approach specifically Linux users, and they have made proposals for, they made a certain invitation for proposals for games for Linux based on the engine that they produce. So today they said 10 Linux game proposals submitted since the competition began last Thursday, which means that these companies are going to nurture and to allow companies to make games which will work specifically on Linux. And if you look at the engine and you look at some of the rendering they do, and I suppose they do also ray tracing, not sure if in real time or in terms of them putting some sort of what's the trick called? Do you know the trick where you basically do the offline calculations of a scene, you like the lighting and everything, and then you just put kind of patches of the appearance. Have you seen how the 3D the shooters have been made? Time before.
No.
It's very interesting in how you have to calculate which parts you have to render and which parts you don't. And in any case, this company has a way of producing extremely realistic like islands they show, and also scenes inside houses. So I think if this works okay, you're going to have a very, very high quality of maybe even free software based games for for Linux, and we haven't had many of them for a while. We had some of the old ones producing new versions of their games. So that's kind of interesting. I know you have some games